Hello, I'm Alex from Andy Best Recaps, and I'd love to tell you a story. In a world torn apart by endless war and pure chaos, a fragile, tiny angel, her black wings shredded and broken, swore on everything she had that she would get strong enough to crush all inequality and injustice. Time flew by, and that little angel evolved into the terrifying conqueror herself. A crew of adventurers, led by Lufaz Mafahel, gathered their guts and came for her head. But man, did she unleash power beyond anyone's wildest dreams. We're talking an unstoppable ability that could utterly overwhelm even heroes of the absolute highest rank. It didn't matter how fierce their attacks were. Lufaz always hit back with something even bigger, something even nastier. Even with all that raw power, she couldn't walk away from that insane clash totally unscathed. Their combined strength was just too freaking much. Still, for the entire battle, she gave off this aura that everything was completely under her control. Then, something totally unthinkable happened. One of the enemy warriors, in a move of pure desperation, deliberately allowed himself to be gravely wounded. Unleashing a true climax ability, a last-ditch effort that caught Lufaz completely off guard, it ripped open just enough of an opening for the party's mage to cast a subspace seal, finally trapping the villainess. But even while imprisoned, she let out a wicked, chilling laugh and started taunting her captors, basically saying, "If you guys actually had the skill to take me down, maybe, just maybe, you might even stand a chance against Orm, the Demon King." Back in front of his computer, a kid scratches his head in defeat. He had just lost an epic fight in X-Gate Online, and Lufaz had fallen, but at least he could say she fought until the very last breath. Suddenly, right there on his screen, Ola Venus, the goddess of creation herself, appeared, the actual deity who sculpted the entire world of X-Gate. She asked him if he'd be interested in taking on a brand new role inside that world. For him, this felt absolutely monumental, like a personal, direct message straight from the game developers. After all, his character, Lufaz Mafahel, had become just as iconic, just as legendary as the Demon King himself. Naturally, the kid accepted, without a second thought. In an instant, he was pulled, yanked into X-Gate Online, not as an avatar this time, but in actual flesh and blood. A group of warriors and adventurers, following their king's command, had just broken the seal of the Black-Winged Conqueror, and they stared in absolute awe at the figure that manifested before them. Touching his new body, the player froze cold as he made a shocking realization. Underneath his clothing was a rather generous chest. Somehow, in a twist of fate, he had been reborn as his own character. When he first created Lufaz, his reasoning was dead simple. If I'm going to stare at this character for hours and hours, she'd better be absolutely beautiful. That was literally his very first mission in the game. What he never ever expected was to become her himself, the terrifying, yet undeniably stunning Black-Winged Conqueror. Desperate for answers, the kid tried to ask a question, but the words that tore out weren't questions at all. They were commands, fierce, absolute, and carrying such raw, dominating force that the poor adventurers collapsed to the ground as if crushed by gravity itself. They could only obey. Realizing that his racial ability, intimidation, must have activated, Lufaz forced herself with incredible effort to rein it back in. The moment she did, an elf among the group turned bone white. He was utterly convinced the conqueror has returned. Lufaz, her voice sharp and merciless, demanded the elf explain how he knew her. Terrified, he fainted right there on the spot, leaving the others to try and fill in the blanks. From their stammering accounts, she pieced together the brutal truth. She had been sealed away for 200 long years, and the Demon King still reigned supreme over Misgars. These adventurers had tried to use the X-Gate spell to summon a hero powerful enough to defeat him, but instead, they had accidentally revived Lufaz Mafahel. It finally dawned on the kid trapped inside her. He was truly, utterly inside the game, and the X-Gate spell, a central mythical mechanic that had never once appeared during his entire gameplay, had finally been used. As mind-blowingly awesome as this wasn't the time to geek out.
What mattered most now was figuring out the hell to do next. Seeing the abject fear plastered across everyone's faces, Lufas decided the best move was to simply get out of there. She told them to forget she ever existed and to just summon another hero in her place to go face the Demon King. Revenge for her ceiling was definitely not on her radar. That last epic battle had been enough to last her a lifetime. No, this would no longer be the story of Lufas the Conqueror. Instead, it would be the journey of a young woman whose hopes had been shattered, now desperately searching for a new path. She wanted to see what the world had become, what form it had taken after 2 centuries. With that thought, Lufas spread her magnificent wings and soared into the skies, genuinely surprised to find she could still use them so freely. Soaring high into the open air, the boy, now the conqueror herself, felt an incredible rush of pure, unadulterated joy. He had been ripped into his favorite game, X-Gate Online, inhabiting a character he himself had meticulously created, a character so unbelievably powerful it thrilled him to the core. One day, he would definitely have to figure out how to get back to his original world, but that could wait. Soon after, he stumbled upon a towering landmark he hadn't seen in ages, an iconic structure at the very heart of the game's deep lore. X-Gate Online, set in the fantastical world of Mizgars, was a medieval fantasy MMO whose absolute crown jewel was its legendary PvP system. Players would swear fierce allegiance to a nation, wage brutal wars against rival kingdoms, and fight tooth and nail to claim victory for their side. But there was another feature that made the game truly unique: the groundbreaking narrative system which somehow adapted players' choices and actions into an official, evolving storyline. Lufas Mafahel was one of its most incredible examples. She had grinded her way to the level cap and become the strongest character in the entire game's existence. For the very first time in the game's history, her creator had managed to completely unify all of Mizgars under her iron rule. It was such a monumental, unbelievable feat that she was officially recognized in the lore, ever dubbed the Black-Winged Conqueror, and even granted semi-official legendary status by the developers themselves. But a world with only one supreme ruler, that sounded like zero fun to the kid. So he struck clever deals with other players, dividing them into 2 massive opposing armies: the Conqueror's Army, under Lufas, and the Army of Light, under the Hero's banner. They completely ignored the actual final boss of the game, and instead staged the single largest, most epic battle in X-Gate's entire history. And, as everyone knows by now, that was when Lufas was finally defeated and sealed away in subspace for centuries. Now, standing before the majestic sky tower of Mafahel, her very own fortress, Lufas makes her way to the Grand Throne Room. A powerful wave of inexplicable nostalgia washes over her as she takes in the Great Hall. Though dusty and utterly empty, it's still in good enough condition to be used. She sits upon the throne, and a flood of memories comes back. The friends she once had, the companions she gathered in this very tower to drink, laugh, and embark on insane missions to expand her dominion. Then a new memory suddenly surfaces, catching the player completely by surprise. At that exact moment, a young girl appears, absolutely stunned to find Lufas seated on the throne. With a radiant, blinding smile and a burst of pure excitement, she approaches her leader, the woman she has patiently, faithfully awaited for 200 long years. But Lufas doesn't share her overwhelming enthusiasm. In truth, she doesn't even remember who this girl is. Frustrated but utterly undeterred, the girl introduces herself as Dina, the Conqueror's advisor. Only then does the player recall placing an NPC in this tower when it was first created. Apparently, the generic backstory he had given her had been enough for Dina to develop her own genuine will and consciousness, which at least explains why she had been waiting so long. After all, Dina is no human player. To avoid making the situation even more awkward, Lufas quickly apologizes for forgetting such a loyal servant and genuinely thanks Dina for safeguarding the massive tower in her long absence. After Lufas recounts the incredible story of how she arrived there, Dina speculates that the ones responsible for freeing her master must have come from the western nation of Levitan, since they had been preparing a hero summoning ritual for quite some time. Curious about the state of the world, Lufas asks what has happened since her departure. Dina explains that the despised heroes who once defeated her master became legendary as the 7 heroes, each going on to found their own powerful nation. 2 centuries have passed, and now 4 of them are dead, leaving only 3, all from races with naturally longer lifespans. The Demon King still lives, and so do the 12 celestial stars of conquest, the incredibly rare and powerful NPC beasts Lufus herself had designed to serve her in war. Back then, she believed a true ruler should always be surrounded by formidable subordinates, like 4 epic generals or something, so she meticulously created them. Dina knows the exact whereabouts of 6 of these creatures and reveals that 2 have actually joined the Demon King, believing they are avenging her death. Though they fight in her name, her master completely disapproves of the path they've taken and vows to deliver them a harsh, unforgettable reprimand. In any case, the Conqueror's creator intends to see the world's current state with her own eyes and confirm whether the 3 surviving heroes are actual players like him. For that, she must embark on a grand journey to reunite the 12 stars. Dina informs her that the nearest one, Ares the Ram, is located in Svel, home to one of the 3 remaining heroes, Megrez. Ares is currently camped out at the foot of a nearby volcano, still trying to break into Svel after all these years. Without a moment's hesitation, Lufus decides they should head there at once, but Dina warns her not to rush out carelessly. Her master is simply too well known, she would be instantly recognized by anyone. Yet Dina reminds her that long-lived races like the elves certainly would, and those distinct black wings are far too unique to ignore. On top of all that, the Conqueror's army is completely broke. If they truly plan to embark on this epic journey, they're going to need some serious cash. So, Dina suggests they go undercover in Swell, register with the Adventurers Guild, and start by taking on small, inconspicuous jobs to avoid drawing any attention.
And so, the pair sets out for Spell. Lufus dons a cloak that completely conceals her entire body, her majestic wings tucked tightly beneath her garments. Still, as she notices the lingering, curious stares of the townsfolk, she realizes she might actually be attracting a different kind of attention now. Regardless, the 2 head straight for the guild, which doubles as a bustling tavern and a gathering place for all adventurers. The moment she steps inside, Lufus feels an instant rush of familiarity. Surrounded by shady, rough-looking types, she's struck by a strange, almost comforting sense of belonging. It's a nostalgic reminder of her wild days as an adventurer before she ever founded her own nation. Standing before the quest board, Dina suggests they start small with a simple job paying 120 Li to find a dozen lost cats. But Lufus quickly points out that tracking animals by scent is a beastman skill, making it far too difficult for them. So Dina finds another request, exterminating orcs, affectionately known as porks. When slain, they have a 3% chance of dropping an item that increases maximum HP, a perfect chance to earn not only the 150 Li reward, but potentially rare sweet loot as well. Without wasting a single second, the 2 travel to Isle Village. There, the elder pours out his heart, recounting his worries. The porks have been rampaging, destroying homes, kidnapping women, and brutally killing the village's young men. Dina reassures the terrified people that the ultimate solution to all their problems is standing right before them. And that solution is none other than Lufus Mothahel. After locating the grotesque pork nest, Dina shudders, remarking that even the goddess of creation must regret every single day having made such a vile, disgusting race. Lufus responds that the goddess is merciful and loves all equally, but Dina insists that Alovanus is not quite so benevolent when it comes to these guys. Either way, she's absolutely eager to see her master wipe out these filthy orcs once and for all. Lufus steps forward, spreading her vast, powerful black wings as she prepares for battle. First, she meticulously checks her status to confirm she truly is at the maximum level, and that everything is in perfect order to absolutely devastate these swine-like creatures. Of course, there's a massive difference between crushing enemies with a controller in hand and doing it in real life. The player feels a flicker of genuine unease. But since they're already here, it's better to try than to back down like a coward. With that firmly in mind, Lufus snaps her fingers, awakening her incredible alchemic creation skill. At once, dozens of magical swords erupt from the very earth and launch themselves with deadly precision toward the enemy monsters, tearing through the guards at the entrance with sinister ease and brutal, horrifying violence. Though she's the one slaughtering these creatures without mercy, the player feels absolutely nothing as the massacre unfolds. In the next instant, every single orc rushes out from within the cave to face the intruder. There's an overwhelming, terrifying number of warriors, and at the absolute center of it all, their massive, grotesque leader looms, promising to be a far, far greater threat. Dina's jaw drops in pure fear, while Lufus remains perfectly composed, radiating calm. The moment the monsters charge at her, the Conqueror realizes just how absurdly, laughably slow they are. Every single movement looks like the agonizing crawl of crippled slugs compared to her lightning speed. With almost laughable ease, Mothahel rips the heads off the lesser orcs as if it were nothing more than a child's pathetic game. As blood rains down, the larger orc's eyes quivered with pure dread, and the black-winged Conqueror can't help but reflect on just how incredibly fragile these creatures truly are. In a desperate, primal frenzy, the orc chief hurls himself forward with all his immense weight, unleashing blow after blow. The very ground shakes beneath his fury, the terrain collapsing into utter chaos. And yet, despite this raging storm of blind rage, Lufus remains utterly untouched, pristine, completely unscathed. As flames rise, wrapping the monstrous chief in a fiery prison, the winged celestial reflects that the real difference isn't their fragility at all. It's that her strength and speed are so astronomically far beyond theirs. These orcs might as well be nothing more than dust. With that chilling thought, Lufus gently presses her closed fist against the enemy leader's head. His skull bursts apart in an instant, a gruesome, sickening display. Dina stares at the grotesque sight, her face frozen somewhere between pure terror and absolute awe, while her master, having crushed the fight so easily, concludes that this could never truly be called a battle. No, it was a massacre.
After exterminating the orcs, it was time to inspect what they might have left behind. Dina then mentions that they got lucky in their hunt, because when orcs are defeated without damaging their backs, their vitality remains in their bodies, which can then be used to increase the vitality of whoever consumes it. Normally, these monsters are always in battles and end up wounded, so finding an orc with its back in perfect condition is extremely rare, with only a 3% chance. Upon learning this, Lufus already devises a plan to defeat orcs without damaging the meat, while Dina, her faithful servant, promises to cook the item later for her master. To make things easier, Dina teleports all the carcasses to the tower, where she can analyze them later. Lufus is impressed by the amount of power and knowledge her servant possesses. Setting that aside, the two set off to rescue the village women who had been kidnapped. Upon freeing them, Dina notes with relief that they are all okay. What she doesn't understand, however, is how none of them were violated, since orcs are grotesque creatures. To her surprise, Lufus explains that they are in fact gentler than they seem, at least with women, seeking to earn their affection with a certain respect. Still, it was clear that the trauma of the kidnapping was already a severe form of violence. Because of this, the Celestial declares that it's impossible for orcs and humans to live in peace. With a gesture, she summons the gigantic fist of Rungnir and crushes the orc's hideout until nothing is left, ensuring that none would survive. After composing herself from that grim spectacle, Dina asks if her master would like her to erase the prisoners' memories to spare them the trauma. Lufus questions if there's a way to reverse the process, and upon learning there is a small possibility, decides to leave things as they are, at least for now. And so, aboard a giant golem, the two take the women back to the village. On the way, Lufus admits she doesn't understand why people no longer take jobs to kill orcs. For her, it was the easiest thing in the world, and the monsters can still drop valuable items. Dina then explains that the world has changed a lot in the last 200 years. People today are much weaker in the era when the feared Lufus ruled. She explains that the kingdom that summoned her is called Lavatane, or the Kingdom of the Sword, and that the strongest swordsman in this land is level 120. This leaves Lufus absolutely shocked, as in her time, surpassing level 100 was relatively simple, and many people reached level 1000 in the game. According to Dina, society's mindset has changed. After all, you only live once. To reach an absurdly high level, people would have to train day after day without rest, giving up everything just to maybe reach that point. Because of that, most preferred to live more normal lives. In that sense, Lufus could understand.
After all, this wasn't a game anymore. With that thought, she raises her head to the sky and reflects on her servant's words, "You only live once." The scene shifts, and a few hours later, as they arrive at the village, joy fills the air. The women were finally safe. The villagers, extremely grateful, paid the promised 1,500 lei, and Lufus even decides to leave the golem behind as a guardian. The village elder no longer knew how to thank her, even calling the Celestial a goddess. Lufus smiles but says nothing. In truth, she was practically the opposite of that. Finally, they prepared to leave. One of the villagers asked for the heroine's name, and since she couldn't reveal her real one, Lufus grows uneasy. Dina quickly steps in and says her master's name is Svalu, a terribly obvious anagram of Lufus. So much so that as soon as they are out of sight, Lufus stomps hard on the girl's foot, mentioning that the name was ridiculous and dangerous, sounding absurdly fake. Nevertheless, Dina, unshakable as always, tanks the pain of the stomp and walks on, confident she did the best she could under pressure. The next day, they take a carriage. With the money they've earned, they can now eat and sleep well and still have a good amount saved. Furthermore, Lufus ate the orc loin and increased her vitality. In other words, this was a great start to their journey, and their next destination was the nation of Svel. Now that they had money, the plan was to find Ares, the ram, one of the 12 heavenly stars, who, for some reason, had been relentlessly attacking Svel. Lufus also wanted to find out if there were other players like her in this world, perhaps the members of the 7 heroes who had defeated her. The first to look for would be Megrez, the ruler of the country they were heading to. After a long trip, they pass through a beautiful field of flowers emitting bright particles. Lufus asks what it is, and Dina explains that it's mana. That nation was rich in this element, and the pulsing field was a sign they were close. Looking out the window, Dina is amazed by the sight of the beautiful city of Water, the nation founded by Megrez. At the entrance gate, however, they are stopped as a visa is required to enter. Lufus is furious for not knowing this, but pulling a rabbit out of her hat, Dina shows a visa to the guard, with her name and the Celestial's fake name, Svalu. The guard comments that it's common for people to forge visas, but that he'd never fall for such a trick. Then he declares the document genuine and lets them pass, even though Lufus is certain the thing was fake. As the scene evolves, and now they're inside the city, the talkative assistant begins a small lecture explaining that the magical nation of Svel was founded by one of the 7 heroes, the elf known as Wise King Megrez. The country is famous for its abundance of mana, used to fund magic schools and the pursuit of knowledge, which is why people from all over the world come here. Lufus asks if the lake's glow is also mana, and Dina confirms, asking if her master isn't bothered, since celestial beings usually don't get along with that much mana. Lufus says that for some reason she feels perfectly fine, comfortable enough to go and meet with Megrez.
Dina worries she might want to invade the castle, but Lufus assures her she doesn't want to cause trouble. She wants to resolve the situation with Ares peacefully, and for that, she first needs to visit the city's library to find out, from the history books, what has happened to the world in the last 200 years. They ask a man, who introduces himself as Goths, a mercenary, where the library is, and he offers to take them. Dina introduces herself and the suspicious, cloaked figure beside her as Svalun. Because of the slip-up, she gets another stomp on her foot. As they walk, Dina comments on how cozy the city is, and Gaunt agrees, lamenting that Ares' attacks have been scaring away visitors. Even so, he assures them the place will stand strong, as the entire lake surrounding the country is actually a water golem, created through alchemy by King Megrez. Lufus analyzes the golem's status and discovers it's a guardian deity named Levia with an absurd HP of 180,000 points. The scene moves on, and in the library, Lufus searches for more recent history books. On a certain shelf, she finds several books telling her own story, usually portraying her as a controversial or evil figure. She doesn't understand how Megrez allows texts that even question the 7 heroes themselves, and Dina explains that Megrez is not a tyrant. Speaking of which, she assures Lufus that Mafahal's image isn't as bad as she thinks, and that today, many believe that if Lufus were in power, humanity wouldn't need to fear the demons, especially since she was never a tyrant. Reading one of the books, Lufus sees her history. A celestial who appeared 200 years ago and unified the world in the blink of an eye. She expelled tyrants and saved nations. Even so, part of humanity turned against her, demanding independence.
This division strengthened the demons, who once feared the unity under the leadership of the black-winged conqueror. With countries becoming independent, the creatures of darkness gained power and inflicted devastating defeats. Currently, humanity is squeezed into a few remaining areas, and the Age of Men is on the verge of ending. Reading this, Lufus nearly falls into despair. She knew the Demon King was still alive, but she never imagined the situation was this catastrophic. She thinks about how she was thrown into this world that was a game, and when it became real, everything was falling apart. Now, with everything in perspective, she understood why a domain as small as Svel was called a country. Humanity was hanging by a thread. After her investigation, Lufus plans to go after Ares, but an earthquake stops her. An unprecedented devastation begins in the city. The intense vibration damages houses and puts lives at risk. Immediately after the tremors, the city's sound system orders all mercenaries to the border. However, Lufus knows Ares possesses an earthquake ability and is certain he is the cause. Dina also knows he's coming, and at that moment, an intense fluctuation of mana is felt from the direction of the epicenter. To get there quickly, Lufus uses her alchemy to create a giant bird from the city's broken stones. While Dina nearly freaks out in fear, her master lets her hold on. On the way, Lufus doesn't understand how Ares can be acting like this, since according to her, he is a multicolored ram, a being that hates conflict. She thinks that perhaps her defeat by the Seven Heroes is the reason, and that this is his revenge. And speaking of the ram, the Celestial is suddenly struck by a vision, a memory of the animal as a young lamb. Meanwhile, marching towards Fel, a horde of monsters is being led by a creature consumed by hatred.
The story takes us to a flashback, to a time when Ares was just a little lamb, wandering alone through the forest. That's when he came face to face with Lufus. She was surprised to see a rainbow ram, a legendary monster said to be born only once every 500 years. But as she approached, the little one recoiled in fear and began to cry. Lufus noticed its tears and figured the little ram had probably been on the run since birth, hiding from both monsters and humans alike, since a single thread of its wool was worth more than gold. She doesn't deny he had good reason to cry, but she questions him. What's the point of shedding all those tears? She continues, saying that if he is unhappy with his situation, he'd better be ready to fight back against those who would hunt him. Otherwise, he'd better prepare to live the rest of his life drenched in sorrow. Her words touched the ram's heart so deeply that, to show his determination to grow stronger, he attacks her. Lufus liked his fighting spirit, even though she easily put him down and invited him to join her. She mentioned that she wasn't at full strength yet, but one day she would conquer the entire world, and she wanted him to become her first companion. She asked if he had a name, and the ram shook its head. Lufus then looked to the stars and named him Ares. We then return to the present, where Gantz and his men are rushing to intercept Ares' forces, as this was clearly the beginning of an attack. Arriving at the front lines, he sees an army of monsters slowly marching towards the city gates and begins to worry. There's no way he can hold off so many enemies until the main army is ready. The earthquake from before must have been Ares' declaration of war. In a short time, the city's vanguard arrives, and the order is given for all mages and archers to fire before the monsters get too close. Also, he politely asks everyone watching this recap to drop some hype and a like to strengthen his troops, because with your help, the army will certainly be able to handle this catastrophic situation even better. After decimating part of the enemy army, the soldiers charge forward. Gantz is at the front, mowing down monsters left and right, but his subordinates aren't as strong, and many are being slaughtered. At this rate, he doesn't think they can hold out much longer. However, just as the troops were about to be annihilated, countless ice spikes rained down from the sky. As they looked back, the soldiers see Megrez and Levia, the water golem, and everyone is relieved. Megrez tells them to fall back, as Levia will handle the rest. With a single command, dozens of monsters are annihilated at once. Meanwhile, Lufus watches the battle from a distance. She had planned to intervene if the situation became critical, but with Levia and Megrez on the scene, it seems her help won't be needed. Speaking of Megrez, Lufus decides to check his stats, but to her surprise, he is now only level 500 and is afflicted with a debuff called the Mark of the Defeated. Lufus has never heard of it, and Dina explains that according to rumors, after the heroes failed to defeat the Demon Lord, they were all hit with a curse that sealed half of their power. In other words, if Megris can't use his full power, it means he can't create more golems like Levia. That is to say, if he falls, the city is doomed. Suddenly, the ground shakes as a giant monster approaches from the mountain, and this threat is none other than Ares. After a brief standoff, Ares and Levia collide. As Ares' element is fire, Levia should have the advantage. Because of this, the golem uses a water spiral attack, forcing Ares to retreat, but he comes back with a massive fireball. At first, it seems the attack missed its target, but the real objective was Megris. But Levia manages to intervene and extinguish the blast.
Megrez then sends Levia as a giant wave, but Ares uses a flame hop skill to jump over it and charges straight for the king. Megrez raises a barrier, but with only half his strength, the shield begins to crack. Before he can break through, Levia appears from behind and puts him in a chokehold. The soldiers cheer, but Lufus knows that although Levia will win this battle, he won't win the war. Levia's HP has been drained, and that was Ares' plan all along, to wear him down with constant attacks and retreat only to attack again in the future. A war of attrition that would guarantee his victory. Lufus can't let this plan go any further, so she grabs Dinah and leaps onto the battlefield. Just as Ares is about to launch another powerful attack, Lufus kicks him, sending him flying. Everyone is in disbelief, and Megrez wonders who could possess such power. But as soon as he hears the way she speaks, he realizes. Lufus doesn't want to confirm anything yet, telling Megrez she will handle Ares and that they will have a talk later. Before she leaves, Megrez warns her that someone is manipulating Ares from behind. Coming from an old friend, Lufus says she'll keep the warning in mind and flies off to confront him. Upon arriving, Ares asks who she is, which surprises her since in the game, he only made ram noises. As he doesn't recognize her, she activates her intimidation skill. As soon as he feels the terrifying pressure, he remembers his master. But even with her right in front of him, Ares refuses to believe it, as he is sure Lufus died a long time ago. Lufus doesn't want to waste time with words, simply saying that if he doesn't believe it, he's free to test her strength, and promises, as a courtesy, not to hurt him too much. Ares prepares to attack with full force, and Lufus even gets excited as this will be her first real fight. Ares charges with intensity, but after pushing her back for a few hundred meters, Lufus stops his momentum with one hand and calls him adorable for trying so hard. For a reward, she says she will give him a hug. In the next second, Ares is being lifted into the air by his head. Lufus throws him high, flies after him, and once she is above him, says she is going to pet him lightly, delivering a punch so hard it even hurt me, sending him back to the ground. However, before he lands, she flies underneath and decides to pet his chin, sending him back into the air. The people watch the fight and just think that the confrontation is balanced because while Lufus was hitting, Ares was getting hit. Lufus finally smashes him into the ground. However, the ram is still not willing to give up and begins to burn with bright blue flames, concentrating his strongest attack. She tells him to come at her with everything he has. He charges with incredible speed, and with a huge smile on her face, Lufus moves to intercept him, resulting in a gigantic explosion. When the dust settles, we see that Lufus has stopped Ares again with the palm of her hand and then flicks him into the rocks, asking if he still doubts. But suddenly he jumps out of the rubble, changes into his human form, and apologizes for his foolish behavior. Lufus is shocked as she even knew Ares had a human form, but she doesn't remember designing him with that appearance. Regardless, after 20 minutes of a lot of crying, Ares finally calms down. Lufus looks at his stats and sees that although his level is the same, his abilities have greatly improved. She says she's on a mission to gather her 12 heavenly stars, and he's the first, so she won't take no for an answer. Ares is happy to be the first once again and agrees to join her, but he has a few questions. Like, for example, who is that blue-haired woman? Dinah can't believe he doesn't remember her. She runs up to him, looks him in the eyes, and reminds him that she has been by Lufus' side the entire time. Suddenly, Ares recalls vague memories of Dinah next to the throne, but since she never moved, he thought she was a piece of furniture. He is surprised to find out she can talk, and she was very upset to be called furniture by the ram. Lucas chuckles a little, admitting that she also didn't know who Dinah was at first, but that she has been a great help, so she asks Ares not to make fun of her.
After Lufus calms Ares' heart, she wants answers, and she gets straight to the point, asking why the hell he was trying to invade the city. Ares, looking all awkward, explains he only did it because he wanted to avenge Lufus after what the humans did to her. After all, if they hadn't sealed her, the demons would have been wiped off the map by now and the world would be at peace. Lufus actually finds the sentiment kinda cute and thanks him for wanting to avenge her, but she lays down the law. She's not even a tiny bit interested in revenge against humanity. But, leaving that aside, she remembers what Megrez had said, that someone was manipulating Ares. She asks, with that subtle way of hers, "Who was the bastard that filled your head with all this crap? She will not stand for anyone deceiving her subordinates." Ares, shaking in his boots, confesses it was one of the demons. And at this exact moment, over on the demon continent, that very demon, a guy named Mars, is getting ready to attack. He was patiently waiting for Ares to wear down Levia so he could invade, and he's prepared an army of monsters, all over level 80, thinking nothing can stop him. Mars orders his army to advance and massacre every human in the city of Svel, but suddenly, Lufus literally drops from the sky right in front of his castle, obliterating every single one of Mars's soldiers in the process. The demon has no idea who this woman is, but he instantly gets that she's strong as hell, so he decides to go and confront her. Mars questions Ares, asking why he stopped the attack. The ram admits he still hasn't forgiven humanity, but he now realizes that destroying everyone won't make him or Lufus happy. In fact, the only ones who would gain from it are demons like Mars, and that's the last thing Lufus would ever want. Because of that, Ares swears he'll stop Mars right here and right now. Mars isn't even fazed, saying he expected this, and that now that Ares is no longer useful, he'll simply eliminate the ram. Lufus, treating this like a walk in the park, tells Ares to sit down and rest since he's still all busted up from the beating she gave him earlier. Mars is surprised that there's someone this strong on the human side, but it doesn't matter. As one of the 7 demon generals, he's confident he can defeat her. And then, my friends, he starts charging up his fire and ice powers, going into an unbearably boring monologue about how his technique works. He just yaps and yaps and yaps. And Lufus obviously gets sick of this pointless rambling. She just rams a punch straight into his face, so hard that the poor guy is sent blasting into the sky. And I can tell you for sure that was an extremely satisfying punch. With that problem solved, there's nothing left to do here. But before they go, she has some questions about those 7 demon generals. Ares is about to explain, but before he can say a word, Dina pops out of a portal and says, "I'll handle the explanation." She tells Lufus that these generals were formed 80 years ago and are the demon lord's strongest subordinates. Lufus is floored. Mars was one of the strongest? That dude couldn't have been more than level 300. Dina then explains the real situation. Humanity wasn't the only side that got weaker over the last 200 years. The heroes were cursed, yes, but before that, they took out almost all of the Demon Lord's truly powerful subordinates with them. Basically, the only ones who left who are on Lufus's level are the big boss himself and his son. At that moment, Ares notices that Lufus didn't actually kill any of the monsters when she landed. She confirms it. She doesn't think it's right to kill the creatures since they haven't done anything wrong. But Dina gets worried. If they're left alone, they might end up hurting people. Lufus, of course, already thought of a brilliant solution. She uses her power to subjugate all the monsters in the area, putting them under her control. She then gives a simple order: return to your natural habitats and avoid attacking humans without a good reason. The monsters start to wander off, and Lufus is happy. Case closed. After that, she heads back to Svel to give Megrez a report. She tells him she's gotten Ares under control and also took care of the demon general behind the whole mess. Megrez is relieved, but he asks about the monsters. Lufus informs him she placed them all under her command, so they won't be a problem. Hearing all this, Megrez has no more doubts. He asks her to come with him to discuss things in private. Lufus, or rather the player inside her, hesitates for a second because the anticipation is killing him. In the game, the player who controlled Megrez was a top ranker, a friend he played with all the time. He's desperately hoping the Megrez in front of him is the same guy. As Megrez heads back to the castle, a bunch of bootlicking nobles surround him, talking about how worried they were, but Dina immediately sees there's zero sincerity there. These guys are only worried about protecting their own necks.
Megrez leads Lufus and the others to his office and assures them the place is secure. There she can show her true form. Lufus obliges and spreads her magnificent wings. And Megrez's reaction? Pure terror. To Lufus's total disappointment, his face is one of panic. It's clear in an instant. He has no memories of being a player. And that just deflates her, to say the least, because maybe she really is alone in this world. Magrez misinterprets her disappointment, thinking she's disgusted by his weak state. He asks if she's come back for revenge for them sealing her. Lufus explains her return was a pure accident. The humans tried to summon a hero and accidentally got her instead. She then gets what's going on. Magrez feels guilty. If he and the other heroes hadn't sealed her, the demons would have been defeated long ago. Being worshipped as a hero while blaming himself for humanity's downfall must be eating him up inside. Lufus lays down the law. She tells him to stop blaming himself for the past. The truth is, he defeated a powerful enemy, and if he and the others rose up against her, it was her own fault for being an inadequate ruler. Magrez can hardly believe what he's hearing. He still tries to argue that he deserves to pay, but Lufus cuts him off, telling him to stop blaming himself. He is the hero of this country, so he needs to be proud. Magrez is touched by the advice and promises to follow it. After that, Lufus uses her magic and restores all of Levia's lost HP. The golem returns to the water, and Lufus apologizes for the trouble Eris caused, though Eris, still grumpy, refuses to apologize. Magrez asks what she plans to do now. Lufus says she'll keep traveling to reunite her 12 heavenly stars. Dina informs her that the next one on the list is Libra, the guardian of the Mausoleum of the Black Wing. Lufus asks what the hell that is. Dina explains that after she was sealed, all the people who admired her got together to build the world's largest structure as a memorial for her. And at the very top, all of Lufus's old treasures and loots were stored, with Libra acting as a guard to protect them. And Lufus doesn't get why anyone would be dumb enough to fight Libra just to rob a grave. That's when Magrez explains the situation. It's not just people's levels that have dropped. Weapons have gotten way worse too. Many of the legendary weapons that used to exist were lost, and the only ones left are in Lufus's tomb. And of course, some bombshell information like that, about an arsenal of legendary weapons just waiting to be grabbed, deserves your like and your hype, doesn't it? Go on, help strengthen the channel so Lufus can get that loot. Humanity has been desperately trying to get its hands on those weapons to fight the demons. But thanks to Libra, all attempts have ended in brutal failure. Magrez, being pretty smart, makes a request. After Lufus retrieves Libra and her treasures, he asks her to please leave behind anything she doesn't plan on using. Lufus agrees. Before they go, Magrez says he has a gift. He uses a powerful magic to hide Lufus's wings so she doesn't have to wear that hood all the time, and also gives her a new outfit, which is much easier to move around in. On the way out, Lufus goes to say goodbye to Gauntz. The guy's confused, not understanding why such a beautiful woman is talking to him. Lufus takes off her glasses to show him it's her, and Gauntz's jaw just drops. He had no idea she was that hot. She thanks him for the help, and he wishes her safe travels. He almost asks if she's the Lufus from the legends, but he suddenly stops himself and tells her to forget it. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Mars finally crash lands face first in a forest. While he was flying, he realized the only person capable of hitting him that hard would be Lufus Mafal herself. But if she's back, all his plans will go down the drain. At that exact moment, a mysterious woman approaches, and my friends, she is identical to Lufus. She tells Mars his role is over and that it's time for him to disappear, like the pathetic puppet that he is. And with a snap of her fingers, Mars is completely erased from existence.
All right, so we see Lufus hanging with Dina and Ares, and she mentions the next stop is to hit up Libra, where the Mausoleum of the Black Wing is located, which is over 500 kilometers away. Dina suggests that Lufus just create a golem to take them there. Lufus thinks it's a drag and asks why Dina doesn't just teleport them. And Dina gives that classic sigh, the one that means she's about to explain the obvious. She mentions that teleporting is mainly for personal use, and that transporting other people is risky. If the person has even a tiny bit of unconscious refusal, the teleport can have all kinds of bizarre side effects. Besides, she was really looking forward to a real road trip. She then asks Lufus to include a bathroom and a place to sleep in the golem. And while Lufus has never heard of a golem with an ensuite, we see Ares get super excited about the idea, so she agrees to try.
She waves her hand, starts the creation process, and eventually the golem is a full-blown RV. She then uses some logs from the forest to create the furniture. Dina is stoked that they'll have comfy beds and asks if Lufus can make some soft blankets too. Lufus looks around for materials, and then she remembers that Ares is a sheep. And, well, I'm sure you know what happened next. With the RV all set, Dina suggests she give it a name. Lufus thinks for a bit and decides to call it Tanaka. And I still don't get why, but they took the chance to create a full-on commercial about the benefits of buying a Tanaka, mentioning that anyone who smashes that like and hype button will get a special discount on their purchase, and anyone who subscribes and hits that bell will be entered to win a road trip with Lufus and Dina. After traveling for a while, we see it's gotten dark, and Dina suggests they stop to make camp. As soon as they step outside, though, Dina smells something different in the air. She investigates and discovers a perfect natural hot spring behind some bushes. She goes nuts, totally stoked to take a bath. Lufus doesn't get the big deal, since the Tanaka already has a bathroom, but Dina says a natural spring is way better. She grabs Ares' hand to get in right away, but the ram reminds her that despite appearances, he's still a guy, and he'll wait his turn. Hearing this hits Lufus hard. Despite her appearance, she is still mentally a guy, and the idea of bathing with Dina is incredibly awkward, but she can't explain the real situation, so she decides to just stand there facing the trees until Dina gets undressed and into the water. As soon as Dina sinks in, she lets out a giant sigh of satisfaction. She calls for Lufus to get in too. Lufus thinks about making an excuse, but it's no use. She obeys and starts to undress. But before she can get in, Dina reminds her it's bad etiquette to get in the water without tying up her hair, otherwise loose strands get everywhere. Lufus agrees, and Dina offers to tie it for her. The problem, Dina isn't wearing a towel. Lufus, not knowing where to look, just tells her to stay put and that she'll go over to her. After Lufus gets in, Dina helps tie her hair, but there's not much they can do about Lufus's feathers that start to fall out in the hot water. Lufus apologizes, but Dina says it's nothing, and that she should just enjoy the chance to relax her wings. As the two of them soak side by side, the player inside starts staring at Dina's body, and he realizes something bizarre. In his past life, he wasn't a total degenerate, but he appreciated the female form. But now, even staring right at Dina's body, he feels absolutely nothing. He comes to the conclusion that he's all dried up. Dina notices Lufus seems a bit zoned out, but before she can ask, she spots a group of adaptive frogs on a rock, explaining that the green ones are male and the pink ones are female, and when there are more males than females, they fight to see who, well, gets the rights to the female. After a winner is decided, the two remaining males, well, one of them turns into a female and joins the one that's left. Our protagonist then has a minor existential crisis, questioning if his preferences have changed too, but he quickly dismisses all that and just suggests they get out of the spring. Minutes later, they return to the Tanaka and tell Ares the bath is free. The scene changes, and the next day the group finally arrives at the mausoleum of the Black Wing. Lufus is absolutely shocked, not just because the structure is gigantic, but because, for some reason, there's an entire city around it. Dina explains that because so many adventurers kept trying to loot the tomb for Lufus's treasures, merchants started gathering there to sell them equipment. I mean, where there's a problem, there's always someone ready to make a buck off it. As a result, more and more people showed up until it became a village, and now Lufus's tomb is basically a tourist trap. Ares, on the other hand, is completely pissed. He can't believe the disrespect and says he's ready to destroy the whole place. But Lufus tells him to cool it, saying for now the best thing to do is just head into the mausoleum.
As they approach the entrance, they bump into a group of adventurers who look pretty worried. Apparently, a recon squad was sent in 2 months ago, but they never returned, and people are thinking something real bad happened. The adventurers see Lufus heading for the entrance and warn her not to go. After all, if the recon team with 50 of the nation's strongest adventurers vanished, a tiny party of 3 wouldn't stand a chance. Lufus thanks them for the concern, but assures them she can handle it. Inside, as they walk the tunnels, Ares suddenly stops. He senses something approaching.
A moment later, one of the golems that Lufus mass-produced 200 years ago steps out of the darkness. Dina explains that a lot of them were left over and now roam the mausoleum, attacking any intruders. Our protagonist mentions that there's nothing to worry about then, since it'll definitely recognize them. Well, in theory anyway, because when the golem sees Dina, it immediately charges right at her. Lufus and Eris just conclude that it also must think she's a piece of furniture, since even they didn't remember her when they first came back. Because of this, Lufus decides to destroy the golem, but before she can act, that group of adventurers from before shows up and jumps in to save Dina. The team's name is Hawkeye, and they followed Lufus in because they were worried. However, this sense of heroism might cost them big time. While the group barely even hits level 40, the golem is level 150. In other words, the chances of this going south are huge. As they fight, we see they're well coordinated, but they aren't even scratching it. Lufus, seeing they're going to get one-shotted if they take a single hit, asks Eris to help out. He immediately rushes in, blows past the adventurers, and lands a flaming punch that sends the golem flying, totally destroyed. The group's leader, Jean, goes nuts and runs up to Eris asking how he did that. Eris gets all flustered while Lufus steps in, telling Jean to calm down. The group introduces themselves: Jean, the warrior, Nick, a sort of agile warrior, and Richard, an armored warrior, and Shu, the group's archer. I can't believe how unbalanced this team is. It's all warriors plus one archer. Since they're doing intros, she says her name is Sufal and she's a high-level ranger merchant. Dina and Eris, not knowing what to say, just claim they're rangers too. Jean gets this really concerned look on his face and mentions that Lufus's team is super unbalanced, and for some reason that just made me laugh so hard. Jean then offers to accompany Lufus's party as support. She was about to refuse, but Dina quickly accepts, saying she'd love the extra help. As they walk, Dina with a little smirk explains to Lufus that they can just use the adventurers as cannon fodder to test the traps and do as much of the work as possible, and that's when Lufus realizes that Dina has some pretty dark thoughts sometimes. Anyway, Lufus decides to let the group stick around and plans to help as much as she can so she doesn't have to carry that guilt. The scene then changes. Meanwhile, at the top of the pyramid, the recon squad that went missing finally reaches the top floor. They swear they'll get the arsenal of weapons for humanity's sake, but when they arrive, they come face to face with Libra. She immediately orders them to leave within 10 seconds or they will be eliminated. The adventurers try to reason with her, but Libra doesn't care. When the countdown hits 0, she activates Brachium, sealing the adventurers in a deadly bubble ready to be executed.
So we're back with Lufus, Dinah, Eris, and the Hawkeye crew as they keep pushing through the mausoleum. Right now, we see the Hawkeye guys in a fight with a golem, and the narrator's assessment here is clear. Based on how useless their hits are, the chance of them getting wrecked is pretty much 100%. And, well, the only reason that doesn't happen is because Lufus herself interferes, subtly telling the golem to just stop moving. And to make things worse, we find out this has already happened countless times. Lufus is obviously questioning her choice to let them tag along. Not only is she stuck babysitting them, which is annoying as hell, she also has to listen to their completely delusional speech about how they're so strong and have won so many battles. For our hero, this is surely a real test of her resilience. Anyway, one way or another, the group reaches floor 106, and consequently, the final Guardian Golem. And my friends, this one is way beefier, level 600. Lufus knows the adventurers would be turned into paste the second they got close, so she tells everyone to stand back, while asking you, who are watching, for the love of God to smash that like and hype button to strengthen the party so everyone can get out of this fight alive. Your help will definitely power them up so they can finally reach Libra. The Hawkeye team tries to argue it's too dangerous, but Dinah, who's completely out of patience, tells them not to worry because Sufal has a plan. Lufus approaches the golem and asks if it recognizes her. The golem reacts to her face, but attacks anyway. This forces her to defend herself, and in one counterattack, she slices the thing in half with a single blow. But as she turns to go up the stairs, the golem, in its final moments, calls her name and says, "Welcome home." And guys, seriously, I thought this scene was so well built. The way Lufus reacts, first with shock, and then how her expression hardens, you really feel the weight of the moment, and you sympathize with her, just like she does with it. She then thanks it for protecting the place for 200 years, and says its job is over. It can finally rest. The golem seems happy, and powers down for good.
After that, she starts to head up, but the Hawkeye team tells her to stop, saying it's too risky, and they want to go with her. Lufas, who's so done babysitting, lays down the law, explaining they would die instantly if Libra attacked. The adventurers can't argue with that, but before she goes, they ask who she really is. They know they're not the sharpest tools in the shed, but even they figured out the only reason they're still alive is because she's been saving their asses this whole time. Lufas pauses for a moment, and then just says she doesn't intend to answer, and heads up without another word. Dinah and Eris stay behind too, since neither of them could handle Libra's brachium. In other words, Lufas has to handle this alone. As she climbs, she reflects on why she felt genuine sadness when she destroyed that golem. She remembers that when he was the player, he didn't care about stuff like that. However, he realizes that being in Lufas's body is somehow mixing their feelings, and he can't feel indifferent to this world and its inhabitants anymore. Finally, Lufas reaches the top floor and finds Libra. The Guardian starts the 10-second countdown for the intruder to leave, but Lufas just takes off her glasses and spreads her wings, revealing her identity. Seeing this, Libra stops the countdown and starts trying to process, but she still can't believe it. She confirms the person in front of her is a 99% genetic match for Lufas, but it's still statistically impossible. Her positronic brain starts to fry, and she goes into a total short circuit. The girl's circuits are totally fried. Lufas even warns her not to think about it, but it's too late. She says she's approaching to administer repairs. Hearing this, Libra's defense protocol kicks in. Since she hasn't recognized Lufas as her master, she warns that if Lufas takes one more step, she'll be forced to use violence. Lufas doesn't stop walking and just asks, "And what are you going to do about it?" Libra interprets this as hostile, and her defense system goes off, activating brachium and creating a massive aerial combat zone. It's basically a domain expansion. Lufas is caught off guard, but when Libra starts shooting missiles and lasers like there's no tomorrow, she snaps out of it, dodges everything, and admits Libra is making this easy. She finds an opening and rushes in. Libra tries to shoot more, but Lufas uses her own wings to bat the bullets right back, disabling the gun. Libra tries everything, but realizes nothing is even coming close to stopping Lufas. Seeing she's lost, she deactivates the domain, and activates another one. Lufas recognizes it instantly. This is Libra's ultimate attack, a domain expansion that ignores all defenses and has a guaranteed hit that deals 99,999 damage. On one hand, this is OP in so many ways I can't even express it, but on the other hand, Lufas is genuinely hyped. And she makes a promise. She'll do her best on the condition that if she wins this fight, you, who are watching this recap, will subscribe and hit that bell so she'll know you're enjoying the adventure. She then thinks this will definitely be the first significant damage she's taken since coming to this world, and right on cue, Libra unleashes the energy wave. Lufas feels the pain and thinks that if she were any weaker, she'd definitely be starring in her own isekai next episode. But she's her, and she has more than enough HP to tank the hit. Because of that, she keeps pushing forward until she's face to face with Libra. Her opponent tries one last laser to the face, but Lufas ducks, grabs the sword arm, and casts the magic All Repair. This fixes all the damage Libra has suffered over 200 years. Lufas apologizes for taking so long, and now with her logic circuits back in order, Libra finally confirms this is her master. She powers down to finally get some rest. Lufas is happy she recovered Libra, but now she's wondering how to explain this to the adventurers. She goes downstairs and only finds Dinah and Eris. The Hawkeye team is just standing there, in a kind of vegetative state. She asks what happened. Dinah, as cool as a cucumber, explains she just implanted some false memories in their heads, making them think they defeated Libra. Lufas had forgotten she had this mental manipulation power. Dinah explains she made them think Libra was already wounded, so they managed to get the final blow. That way no one will ask questions. Lufas thinks this is way too convenient and asks if Dinah planned this from the start. She doesn't deny it. With a creepy smile, she says that was the only reason she tolerated those obstacles. Lufas gets chills seeing how cold she can be, but is glad they're not enemies. Anyway, since that's all settled, they head up to the treasure room. And my friends, the place is loaded with gold and shiny items, and Lufas can barely contain herself. Dinah explains that Lufas always loved shiny things, which is why she hoarded so much treasure. She then asks Eris to help her sort out the useful items while Lufas is distracted.
Our hero tries to argue she can control herself, but she's already got her hands full of gold coins. And speaking of treasure and loot, I'm going to sort out my loot right here. I'm going to be looking for everyone who left the comment Lufuss's loot down below. Go ahead and comment. Costs nothing and helps the channel get more OP than Lufuss herself. A while later, Dinah and Eris finish grabbing what matters. The rest is just old weapons. Dinah asks Lufuss to gather all the golems in the mausoleum to be teleported, and Lufuss spends the next few hours farming golems in this giant place. Afterwards, Dinah teleports everything. Lufuss asks if it's okay to leave the adventurers, and Dinah says it's fine. Minutes after they leave, the Hawkeye team wakes up, 100% convinced they cleared the mausoleum. Outside, Dinah fixes Libra's clothes and reactivates her. The first thing Libra does is greet Eris and the unknown lady. Dinah again can't believe another one doesn't recognize her, while Lufuss just laughs and explains that Dinah is her advisor. Libra is shocked as she has no data on Dinah. She even finds some damaged memory files about Dinah, but for now she decides to just accept the situation. Lufuss then asks if Libra wants to serve her once more, and of course she accepts with all her heart. Our hero wants to know about the other heavenly stars, but Libra knows nothing, having been trapped in the tomb for 200 years. At that moment, Lufuss turns to Dinah, and Dinah, all smiles, explains the next one is Parthenos the Virgin, who lives secretly in a village 2,000 kilometers away, a village she created. Lufuss is relieved she's not causing trouble, until Dinah mentions that the mountain where the village is was Lufuss's homeland, and that Parthenos kicked out all the winged Celestials, Lufuss's race, from there, creating an uninhabitable zone. And our protagonist, once again, is disappointed.
Alright, so we get this flashback to when Lufuss was still the player, but the scene doesn't develop much because her thought is interrupted by Dinah, who asks what's going on. Lufuss just deflects, saying she was having a dream, and changes the subject by mentioning how comfortable it is inside the Tanaka, the golem she turned into an RV. Dinah tries to dig for info, asking what she dreamed about, but Lufuss just says she thinks it was important, but she can't remember what. Because of that, she decides to focus on the mission and asks if they're still far from Vanaheimer, Lufuss's homeland. At that moment, Eris wants to know if Parthenos the Virgin kicked out Lufuss's race, the Winged Celestials, where did they go? Dinah explains they now live in Yallarhorn, a nation founded by one of the 7 heroes, Merak, the King of the Skies. Lufuss immediately gets that she won't get along with them because of her Blackwing backstory, but she needs to check if Merak, just like Megrez, remembers anything from the game. By nightfall, the group arrives at Yallarhorn, and my friends, the city is a logistical nightmare, built entirely on the face of a cliff. Eris notices the city is split into black and white, and Dinah explains the obvious: the nation is suffering from a civil war. Basically, the White-Winged Celestials think they're better than everyone, and it caused a massive civil beef. On the other side, you have the opposition, who are the supporters of the Mixed Wings. Lufuss asks why Merak hasn't fixed this, and Dinah explains the hero is trying to stay neutral. The classic fence-sitter, to which Libra mentions straight up that he is being an absolute incompetent. Lufuss even tries to run defense for him, asking her not to talk like that. Eris remembers that back in Lufuss's time, persecuting the Blackwings was forbidden. Lufuss finds this weird because she, the player, doesn't remember issuing that order. Dinah explains that as soon as Lufuss was sealed, the White Wings used it as a chance to claim superiority, and the Black Wings fought back. And this beef has been going on for 200 years. Lufuss feels kinda guilty and decides she has to do something. The problem is, her race lives 1,500 years on average, so obviously a ton of them definitely knew her 200 years ago. She has to cover her face. When it's time to go up, they realize the hassle. The city was built for people who can fly. Eris starts complaining, but Libra says she has the perfect solution. She activates Aerial Jet, and before Lufuss can say no, the robot grabs everyone and blasts off towards the Black Wing side of the city. They land safely, but the sound of a jet engine wakes up the whole neighborhood. Lufuss scolds Libra for being so loud, but Libra, with 100% sincerity, basically says she doesn't give a damn about anyone's feelings except for Lufuss's. The people are confused. Dinah introduces herself as a merchant, and Lufuss, introducing herself as Sufal, apologizes for the mess. The people there seem cool, and one of them, the owner of a local inn, offers them a room. Everything seems fine, but at night, my friends, the nightmare comes. Lufuss has a brutal flashback, but it's not a flashback from her time as a player, it's the original Lufuss's backstory. We see her as a child getting beaten by her own father,
who calls her a disgrace to the bloodline, all because she was born with black wings. And this is an infuriating moment to watch. And just when you think it can't get any worse, we see him lock her in a dark shed with no food while he's all smiles socializing with his rich white-winged friends. But even in this horrible situation, we see that Lufus's mother, who looks sick, sneaks out to bring her food. Lufus, even in that horrible situation, just hugs her mom and tells her to go back inside. But on the way, we get another dose of rage as the father appears, sees the scene, and gets furious. The young Lufus tries to protect her mom, but she's too weak. The father punches her in the face, throws her to the ground, and drags his wife away, leaving the little Lufus alone in the rain. And right there, she realizes the world is unfair, the goddess of creation isn't coming to save her, and she'll have to get strong enough to end all the suffering. With that, she runs away from home, vowing she would conquer the world. At that moment, our Lufus jolts awake. Libra, who was on guard, asks if she's okay. Lufus brushes it off, saying it was just a dream, but her inner self, the player, is freaking out, with the absolute certainty that he never wrote that backstory. And that's when it hits him. The dream, the emotions, they're the memories of the original Lufus. This world isn't just a game, it has real events. And if his soul is in Lufus's body, the question that remains is, what happened to her soul? Meanwhile, in the Demon Lord's castle, the 7 Astros, the demon generals, are having a meeting. They notice Mars, the one Lufus yeeted into the stratosphere, is missing. They just assume he's dead, and honestly, nobody cares. After all, he was the weakest. Suddenly, Venus, that deep web Lufus we saw at the end of episode 4, appears. She says she knows what happened to Mars. The others ask where she's been, and she says she was following the person who killed him. She couldn't see their face, but she saw one thing, mentioning they had beautiful black wings. Panic fills the room. The first person who comes to mind is, of course, Lufus. But it can't be. She was killed by the heroes 200 years ago. They don't think Venus is lying, and if Lufus is really back, the demon world is in deep trouble, because according to them, even the Demon Lord was afraid to face her alone. The Astros ask where Lufus is, and Venus informs them she saw Lufus heading to Yallarhorn. With that, they decide to send Venus and Jupiter there. And my friends, with the demons now hunting Lufus and her team about to split up, our protagonist is going to need all the strength she can get. And that strength, of course, is your like and your hype. Help strengthen Lufus because Venus is clearly not messing around and things are about to get serious. The scene changes. The next morning, Lufus and her team decide to split up to gather info. Lufus Feet is on the Blackwing side, Dina bravely goes to investigate the Whitewing side, and Libra does an aerial sweep. Eris, before leaving, gives her a crucial piece of info. Iga Kiros, the goat, another heavenly star, is probably a traitor and has allied with the demons. His master thanks him for the warning, and as the scene evolves, we see her walking through the city, and she comes face to face with a giant black temple. She gets curious, walks inside, and finds a statue of herself. The temple caretaker approaches, seeing her confusion. Lufus, in disguise, comments that she's surprised to see a statue of the world's biggest tyrant. The caretaker gets offended. He explains it to the rest of the world she might be a tyrant, but for the Blackwings, Lufus was and will always be their savior. She was the only one who outlawed discrimination and gave them dignity. Lufus asks about Parthenos, who kicked them out, and the man says they see that as a deserved punishment for betraying Lufus, and that it was mercy from Parthenos not to kill them all. And King Merak? The caretaker's face sours. The worst kind of fool. They love Lufus so much, they built a church for her. The scene then shatters into 3. First, we see Dina. She's in the city, waiting for someone, and she's starting to get pissed about how late they are. After that, we see Libra. She's in the air, scanning everything. She spots Dina, and further down, she sees a man heading straight for Dina. Analyzing his weird appearance, she gets it. It's a demon in disguise.
The scene opens with Libra laying down the law to the disguised demon. Get lost or face hostile action. The demon, who we find out is Jupiter, one of the 7 Astros, tries to play it off like a regular citizen, but Libra has already seen through his disguise. He drops the act and attacks, and Libra activates her defense protocols. Meanwhile, Eris is on the edge of the city, pissed. He's remembering this place was founded by one of the heroes who betrayed Lufus, and he just wants to burn it all down. He knows Lufus wouldn't like it, so he goes for a walk to cool off. But suddenly, a barrier forms, and he comes face to face with Egocaris, the traitor goat.
Elsewhere, in the castle, we see Marok, the king fence-sitter. He's in a meeting with the White Wings and looks visibly exhausted. The guys are screaming at him, demanding he use his power to get rid of the Mixed Wings. We find out Marok originally founded Galahorn for the Mixed Wings, to give them a place, but then Parthenos went to Vanaheim and kicked the White Wings out of their homeland, and Marok, being soft-hearted, accepted them in. And now, even though it's not their land, the White Wings demand privileges and persecute the Mixed Wings. Marok, with his inferiority complex towards Lufus, thinks he's an incompetent ruler and doesn't know what to do. And I, who initially thought badly of this guy, at this moment I just think his mistake is maybe being too good. We'll find out as we go. The scene changes, and we're back to the action. Aegocaris, the goat, is still trying to convince Eris to join the demon army to destroy the heroes. Eris flat out refuses. He explains that he gets the goat is doing this for revenge for Lufus, but says he doesn't need to anymore, because Lufus is back. As soon as Aegocaris hears this, he freezes. He can hardly believe it, but it makes sense. After all, it would have to be Lufus to defeat Mars. Eris tells him to come back to his master's side, but the goat, despite still being loyal, says he can't. He says that if he doesn't eliminate her enemies first, they will just betray Lufus all over again. Aegocaris' new plan is to destroy Marok's nation and the rest of the heroes, then destroy the demons, offering it all as a sacrifice to Lufus. Eris tries to tell him he's crazy, but the goat is way too amped up, teleports, and bails. Eris just stands there, thinking, and honestly, he hates the heroes just as much as Aegocaris does. He decides to wait. If the White Wing folks are the same racist trash from 200 years ago, he's gonna let Aegocaris clean house. Meanwhile, Dina's in the rich part of the city, waiting and getting impatient. She spots a suspicious guy entering a dark alley and decides to follow. And what does she hear? It's one of the White Wings from Marok's meeting. The guy's telling his buddies that Marok refuses to take a side, so they're going to have to get their hands dirty and take care of the Mixed Wings. And the worst part, he says the Mixed Wings are preparing for war and his source is Jupiter, who would never lie. Jupiter was fanning the flames of the Civil War. He was supposed to meet the guys there, but as we know, he's a little busy getting beat up by Libra. Dina, who's sharp, gets the whole picture. Jupiter is the double agent starting the fire. Back to Libra's fight, we see Jupiter's going all out, but getting nowhere. On one hand, he's fast, but on the other, Libra is straight up a tank. The only reason he's still alive is because he can dodge. And Libra, being a robot, is just analyzing his patterns. Jupiter realizes he's about to lose, creates a dust tornado to blind her, and bails. That night, the team meets up to share info. Dina lays it all out. The White Wings are ready for war and some guy named Jupiter fanned the flames. Libra adds, I fought one of the 7 Astros named Jupiter. He escaped. Lufus is surprised. Why would a demon want to destroy a city that's already destroying itself? She tells Libra to capture Jupiter alive next time, and Libra asks for new ammo, homing missiles, since she's running low. Lufus agrees, mentioning that the amount of ammo will depend on the likes and hype from the viewers who want to see them win this fight. So, if you like Lufus and her allies, smash that like button and that hype button to help out. With that, she turns to Eris and asks if he has anything to report, and he, still thinking about letting the circus burn, just lies straight to her face and says he has nothing interesting to report. Lufus, not suspecting a thing, tells them what she saw, the Church of Lufus. Hearing this, Libra suggests that they should join the Mixed Wings in the war, but Lufus cuts her off. She's not taking a side. If the war breaks out, the demons invade. They have to prevent the war. Later, Lufus is there creating the ammo for Libra and thinking about how she just wanted to talk to Marok and is now stuck in the middle of a civil war. Meanwhile, in the forest, Jupiter is throwing a tantrum. He can't get near the city because of Libra, which screws up the whole plan. And who shows up? Venus, the deep web Lufus. He complains she didn't help, but Venus, full of sass, says she was at the meeting spot. He's the one who never showed. Jupiter's pissed because the plan, let the Celestials kill each other so he could kill Marok, is ruined. Venus, feeling guilty, offers a new deal. She can distract Libra for about 20 minutes. Back in the city, Lufus finishes the ammo. Libra goes to store it, and she lifts her skirt and all the ammo just disappears inside. Lufus is surprised by the unconventional way she stores ammo, but tries to keep her surprise to herself. Libra thanks her and promises Jupiter won't escape. But then, Libra notices something. Where's Dina? My sensors say she's not within 100 kilometers radius. Lufus tells her to chill, that Dina just uses teleport and will be right back. And Libra drops the bomb. Teleport? You mean X-Gate? Lufus says I don't know the details, and Libra seems surprised, asking if there is any other teleport magic besides X-Gate. At this moment, Lufus just bugs out. She even thinks she has more important things to worry about, but she gets that it makes sense for Libra to be surprised. After all, 200 years ago, teleport magic didn't exist, and magic like that didn't exist in X-Gate Online. In the game, that spell was just a theory. You couldn't actually get it. So, is Dina's magic X-Gate, or is it a new magic that appeared in the last 200 years? In other words, if she can use it, what the hell is she? And she wonders why she's just now remembering this. What do you guys think, huh? Has Dina been playing everyone from the start? Comment Dina is sus down below if you also think she's the real villain. Lufus tells Libra that as soon as Dina gets back, they're gonna have a little chat. Moments later, Dina returns, and the room is dark. Suddenly, a spotlight hits her face. It's an interrogation. Lufus confronts her. Is your teleport magic the X-Gate spell? And Dina doesn't deny it. Lufus is shocked, but then Dina, instead of being a sinister double agent, gets mortally offended. She throws a fit, saying she worked hard for the last 200 years to stand out and be more than just a furniture NPC. She's so serious about it that Lufus gets totally embarrassed and decides to drop the subject. Dina, relieved, mentions on a completely unrelated note that her X-Gate should work on Libra, since Libra is a golem, an object, and the restrictions don't apply. She suggests a test, right now. Libra agrees. Jupiter is gone, it won't be a problem if she's gone for 10 minutes. They both teleport. And, my friends, it doesn't even take 10 seconds. The instant that Libra, the city's only defense, disappears, Jupiter attacks, sending a massive explosion into the White Wing district, where we see a dense magic begin to incite both the White Wings and the Mixed Wings to kill everything they hate.
Lufus watches everything closely and realizes the people are under the effect of berserk magic. And this isn't just a skill, it's moon magic. This makes things even more confusing, because Jupiter uses wind magic, so whoever casts this spell is likely someone else. She rushes over to Ares and tells him there's someone else trying to destroy the city. Ares, looking nervous, asks, what if it was one of the heavenly stars doing this out of loyalty to you? He's terrified she'll be pissed if she finds out it's Aegokeros, the goat. Lufus says she'd have to slap some sense into them, but honestly, she'd be happy with the loyalty, even if it's twisted. Ares, relieved but still guilty for not telling her sooner, decides to handle it himself. But Lufus knows, if it is Aegokeros, Ares stands no chance. In the center of the city, we see Aegokeros spreading his negative energy, making the Celestials kill each other. The city is already burning, and Jupiter, from a rooftop, thinks it's hilarious how easy it was. He plans to bail before the 10 minutes Venice bought run out, so he doesn't bump into Libra. But to his sorrow, guess who appears behind him a second later? Yes, my friends? Libra. Jupiter doesn't understand how she got back so fast. Libra, who has already analyzed all his patterns, simply states his chance of victory is less than 1%, offering mercy if he surrenders. Obviously, he refuses and tries to run, but Libra has seen this trick before and shoots him in the back. With his reaction time slowed by pain, he can't dodge the homing missiles, the ones Lufus made with "you're like" from the last episode. He tries to create a wind barrier, but Libra punches right through it and buries him in the ground. He tries to use wind magic to silence the area and hide, but Libra simply punches through the wall and grabs him by the neck, telling him silencing sound does nothing against her radar. Jupiter, in a panic, uses a wind blast on her hands to break free and runs away in desperation. And I can't believe this guy's gonna escape again. Meanwhile, Ares arrives at the center to face Aegokeros. The goat figures out Ares is there to stop him, but refuses to undo the berserk spell until the city is dust. They start fighting. Ares is at a disadvantage against the goat's moveset, but he doesn't give up. He sees an opening and pierces Aegokeros' chest with a fire punch. However, that was just a clone.
The real Aegocaris was flying above them the whole time, charging up a spirit bomb of evil energy. He throws the bomb at Ares to kill him, but at the last second, Lufus appears and blocks the attack with one hand. She yells at Aegocaris, calling him a fool for trying to actually kill Ares. But the goat doesn't even hear the insults. The moment he sees it's Lufus, he starts crying tears of joy. Lufus was going to punch him, but seeing him cry, she stops. She understands he did this out of twisted loyalty. She asks him to undo the spell and says she'll forgive the mess if he serves her again. The goat, happier than a pig in mud, turns human, swears loyalty, and slips into her shadow. He undoes the spell, but warns her the war won't stop. The spell only amplified the hate that was already there. The sides still hate each other and will kill each other anyway. Lufus realizes the situation is worse than she thought, but suddenly, Dina appears and says she has a way to stop the war. Aegocaris is confused, as he doesn't recognize Dina, but has a vague memory of her being a background character 200 years ago. Meanwhile, Jupiter is running for his life, trying to escape Libra. But no matter where he goes, Libra always finds him, like she's playing cat and mouse. Finally, she corners him in a place with no civilians and says she can use Barakium freely. She gives him 10 seconds. Jupiter, broken, surrenders. The scene changes. In the town square, the war is about to fully break out. But then Merak appears and starts giving a speech, asking the people to lower their weapons. Lufus is happy to see Merak, but shocked to see one of his wings is missing. Dina explains it's the Demon King's curse. Besides sealing half their power, the curse takes a body part. Megris lost his legs, Merak lost a wing, and for a Celestial, never flying again is a terrible fate. We see that unfortunately, Merak's speech isn't doing much, but then Libra arrives, dragging the tied-up Jupiter. Dina goes down there to tell the full story. She points at Jupiter and says, "This guy is one of the Demon King's 7 Astros." The White Wings recognize him instantly. After all, he was conspiring with them.
Dina drops the truth bomb, asking who benefits from the nation's destruction. The people finally connect the dots, understanding it was all demon manipulation. Their hate turns toward Jupiter. And here comes the bizarre part. Jupiter is on the ground, and when he looks up, he sees Dina smiling and realizes she is identical to Venus. Everything makes sense to him now. She was the one who sent Liber away so he would attack. She planned everything for him to be the scapegoat. Furious at the betrayal, he breaks his bonds and lunges at Dina for revenge. But he ends up impaled from behind by Libra's hand, who mentions he moved without authorization, so she did what she had to do. He tries to explain who she is, but before he can manage it, she simply rips his head off with one strike. Dina, smiling, looks at the crowd and mentions the problem is now solved, while Lufus looks down from above and just thinks the people are actually terrified by the barbarity that just happened. But even more important than that, she really wanted to understand what that demon was trying to say. The scene changes. Later, Merak thanks Libra and asks her to come to the castle. Dina says Libra only obeys her master. Merak sees the disguised Lufus in the back and invites everyone. In a private room, Lufus takes off her disguise. Merak is happy and sad at the same time. He starts lamenting, saying it was a mistake to defeat her, that he's not fit to be king. And this confirms it for Lufus. He is not a player. He's just a native of this world, and he's an emotional wreck. But hearing him say defeating her was a mistake makes Lufus pissed. She knows the original Lufus fought without regrets, so she gives Merak a lecture. Have some pride. You defeated me. This nation is yours now. She says she won't help anymore, and he has to figure it out. After the aggressive motivational speech, Lufus feels embarrassed and asks Libra to delete any photo she might have taken of the moment. Libra pauses. What is a photo? Ares and Aegocaros don't know either. Lufus assumes photos don't exist in this world. But wait,
Lufus has a flashback. When she arrived in this world, she told Dina about not having photos of her, and Dina acted normally, as if she knew what it was. If photos don't exist here, how did Dina know what a photo was?
Lufus, swallowing hard, just says she wants to talk alone and invites Dina, who, with a creepy smile, accepts the invitation. The scene changes. We see the White Wing people trying to justify their actions, saying everything they did was for the good of the nation. But Merrick snaps. He starts emanating power, making everyone present feel the pressure, and asks if he gave anyone permission to speak. He continues, saying he treated everyone with great generosity, but he acknowledges he was wrong and mentions he won't be Mr. Nice Guy forever, ordering the guards to take them away. The scene changes one more time. We see Migres reporting to someone else that the city of Svel is free from the threat of the 7 Astros, and that he can no longer detect Ares' movements. The other person says it was inconsiderate not to warn her. Laughing, she just says that this time she will settle the score with Lufus Mafal. She reveals her name. She is the vampire Benetnas, swearing she will certainly kill her.
Lufus and Dina are face to face, and our heroine gets straight to the point. Who the hell are you? Because there's no way she's a loyal advisor. Dina, seeing the gig is up, admits it. She lied. And honestly, she says it should have been obvious from the start. If she were a loyal advisor waiting for 200 years, the tower would be clean, but it was all abandoned when Lufus arrived. And if she were a subordinate, Libra would have remembered her. Dina confirms she is nothing to Lufus. She just knew Lufus had an NPC with that design in the tower and usurped the identity to get close. The fact that Dina knows the term NPC immediately raises a red flag for Lufus. She must be a player too. But what about the others' memories? You might be wondering, just like Lufus did. But then she remembers Dina said she had the power to manipulate memories. When questioned, Dina confirms it, saying she implanted memories in Aris when she met him and in Igokaris when he went to the demon castle. With Libra, however, she couldn't because golems don't have brains to manipulate, so she just got lucky that the robot's records were damaged. Lufus gets worried and wonders if Dina messed with her head too, but Dina says no, because Lufus's pride, or rather her will, was too strong. It would have taken a year of constant concentration to pull that off. So, since she didn't have that kind of time, her only option was to deceive her with smooth talk and assume the role of advisor. She even tried to give her some subconscious nudges, but she never expected Lufus to be a player, which was a serious miscalculation. And just to clarify, Dina makes it clear she's not a normal player, but a beta tester. The company hired her to test the half-elf race, and as a perk, she could view all character data, which is how she knew about the NPC in the tower. Are the surprises over? Of course not, because on top of all that, she drops her disguise and reveals she is Venus of the 7 Astros. However, she planned to keep up the act until Lufus and the demons killed each other, but since she's been found out, the only option is to crush Lufus and turn her into a pawn by force. Lufus laughs. You with level 300? Venus laughs back. That's a fake screen, honey. I'm level 1000, just like you. She flies up, creates a barrier so no one can interfere, and fires a laser. Lufus blocks it without a scratch. Venus decides to get serious and summons hundreds of swords. Lufus is worried at first, but realizes the DPS, damage per second, is low. She parries the swords and creates her own, but Venus opens X-Gate portals and sends them right back. Lufus tries a tackle, Venus teleports and uses water magic. Lufus cuts it with a kick. Our protagonist then flies up, but Venus says it's useless because she can use her X-Gate to teleport. Except not really, because our X-Boss has already figured out the pattern. When Venus exits the portal, Lufus is already there, fist raised. Surprise, motherfucker! Venus dodges and counters with a punch, but Lufus doesn't even feel it. She mentions attacks like that won't work on her, because Venus might be strong, but her class is backline mage. Because of that, her physical stats are a joke compared to Lufus's HP. Our protagonist, who is full-on brawler, gives her an open palm slap that sends Venus crashing to the ground. She gently asks Dina to give up, because technically, a mage can fight on the front lines, but they need a specific build, and Dina never did that. She mentions Dina only tested the balancing, but was never a tryhard of the game. Since she never participated in real combat, her opponent is infinitely superior in skill. Lufus asks for peace, and Dina asks if she's going to forgive the betrayal. Lufus says that despite everything, Dina helped a lot, and the only thing she asks in return is to know why she chose such a complicated method if she wanted to destroy the demons. Dina stays silent and then says she hasn't lost yet because she has one last trick. At that moment, she unironically pulls a Pain and summons a giant meteor right on Lufus's head, teleporting away so she doesn't die too. Lufus could run, but the meteor would unironically destroy Gjallarhorn, so she has no choice but to tank it. She flies straight at the meteor with zero fear, landing a kick mixed with strength, courage, and the power of plot armor, causing the meteor to simply disintegrate. To the people down below, it just looked like expensive fireworks. Lufus lands and asks if Dina wants to continue. Her opponent admits defeat. If her strongest attack did nothing, it's over. Lufus wants explanations, and Dina tells the truth. She mentions she came to this world right after Lufus was sealed and realized she wasn't in the game world, but in the serialization of the game, in other words, the novels. And this is a shock for Lufus. The game had a system that turned player actions into official stories. The problem? Few people got in, and the number of players was way higher than the number of authors. Dina looked for other players, but found no one. All her friends were already natives of this world. She concluded she was the only player brought here. Frustrated and alone in a world on the brink of destruction, knowing she wasn't strong enough to kill the Demon King alone, she planned to infiltrate to delay the conquest from within. And when Lufus returned, she planned to use her to kill the Demon King once and for all. It sounds convincing, but Lufus feels like something is wrong. She doesn't know what it is, but her instinct says there's something fishy going on. But the only thing she wants to know is, are you my enemy or not? Dina guarantees she isn't, and Lufus, surprising everyone, asks her to go back to being her advisor. Dina is incredulous. After all that? Lufus doesn't care. She owes Dina a lot, and having a subordinate full of secret plots sounds fun. Dina asks if Lufus is really a player, because that answer sounded way too in character. Lufus laughs and admits the memories are blending. But the truth is, she's happy to find someone in the same situation. Yes, Dina tried to manipulate her, but Lufus was going to kill the Demon King anyway, so whatever. Dina, moved, agrees to serve loyally. Moments later, Lufus's subordinates arrive, worried about the meteor. Lufus makes up a story that she was attacked by a mysterious force. No one questions it. They prepare to leave and go get Parthenos. Lufus asks Igokeros about the other stars. He says Scorpius the Scorpion is also with the demons, and Leon the Lion is at war against the vampire princess Bennett Nosh. In other words, looks like a lot of trouble is coming. But there's one more thing. Igokeros heard a rumor that the kingdom managed to summon a hero. The scene changes to the castle of Levatum, where we see the mages completing the ritual, and in the center of the circle appears a boy who looks exactly like, I don't know, a generic isekai anime protagonist. Or worse, I got the impression he even looks like our protagonist, making all of this even more confusing. And with the arrival of this deep web Kirito and the reconciliation between Lufus and Dina, today's episode comes to an end. What do you guys think of this new hero? Is he gonna be a friend or foe? And Dina, can we really trust her? If you want to find out, you know what to do. Smash that like button and that hype button to give us that strength. Leave a comment down below with your theory, and of course, subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss the continuation.